The rain-slicked asphalt gleamed under the sodium lamps of the Seattle parking garage. And I gunned my Prius into the spot without a second thought. Horn blaring behind me. But I was already out. Heels clicking like gunfire on the concrete. That blue Honda Civic idled there. Furious. Its driver a blur through the windshield. But I had a deposition in 10 minutes and zero patience left for apologies. I slammed my car door. Keys jangling in my fist. And turned to face the music. She stepped out then. All golden hair and quiet fury. Slamming her own door with a precision that made my stomach twist. Early 30s like me. But softer around the edges. Wearing a faded denim jacket over a white tee that clung just enough in the damp air to hint at the curve of her hips. Her eyes, green as the evergreens outside the city, locked onto mine. And for a split second, the world narrowed to that stare. Sharp as a scalpel. "You've got to be kidding me," she said. Voice low and edged with something that wasn't quite anger. More like the ache of a long day unraveling. I opened my mouth to fire back. Some excuse about deadlines and traffic. But the words caught. Tangled in the sudden heat rising in my chest. April Hayes. Top litigator at Preston and Locke. Reduced to silence by a parking thief's glare. I straightened my blazer. The silk lining whispering against my skin. And forced a smile that felt like cracking ice. "Look. It's just a spot. Plenty more down the row." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. The garage was packed. Lawyers and baristas and tech bros all circling like sharks. She crossed her arms, leaning against her Civic, and let out a breath that fogged the air between us. It was a sigh heavy with the weight of unspoken stories. The kind that makes you wonder what ghost she's carrying. "I'm May," she said finally, extending a hand smeared with faint ink stains. Like she'd been highlighting passages in some forgotten novel. And that spot was mine. Reserved. Actually. For the bookstore deliveries. Bookstore. The word landed soft. Pulling at something buried in me. A memory of dog-eared pages and rainy afternoons before law school swallowed my life whole. I took her hand. Felt the warmth seep through my chilled fingers. And muttered. "April. Sorry. Really." But my grip lingered a beat too long. And her eyes flickered. Searching mine for the lie beneath the apology. She pulled away first. Nodding toward the elevator bank. "Elevators that way. Try not to steal the whole building while you're at it." A half-smile tugged at her lips. Disarming. And I laughed despite myself. The sound echoing off the concrete pillars like an admission. As the doors hissed shut behind me, leaving her to circle for another spot, I pressed my forehead to the cool metal wall. Heart pounding not from the near miss but from the echo of her touch. "Get it together. April. It's Seattle." People brush past each other 1,000 times a day without combusting. But that night, tossing in my Queen Anne apartment with the sound lapping at the ferry docks below, her face haunted me. Green eyes in the rearview. Ink-stained hands that felt like they could rewrite my hurried script. The next morning, I woke to the grind of my alarm. The city skyline smudged gray through my floor-to-ceiling windows. Coffee black as my mood. I scrolled case files on my laptop. But my mind drifted to Pioneer Square, where her bookstore must hide among the brick facades and steam from food carts. By noon, the deposition dragged. Witnesses hemming and hawing under my cross. But I kept seeing May's sigh. Hearing the faint lilt in her voice that spoke of Midwest roots transplanted west. I broke for lunch early, claiming a migraine that wasn't entirely false. The streets buzzed with umbrellas blooming like black flowers. And I let my feet carry me downhill. Past the fish market's brine tang and into the shadowed alleys of the square. There it was, Pages Unbound, a narrow storefront wedged between a tattoo parlor and a vintage shop. Windows fogged with the breath of readers inside. The sign swung lazy in the drizzle, promising escape in paper and ink. I pushed through the door, bell tinkling soft, and inhaled the scent of aged spines and fresh varnish. Shelves towered to the ceiling, crammed with titles that whispered of worlds I'd abandoned for billable hours. And there she was, behind the counter, perched on a stool with a ledger open. Glasses perched on her nose like a secret. She looked up, startled. Then her face softened into recognition. A slow bloom of surprise that made my pulse stutter. "April," she said, setting down her pen. No accusation. Just that quiet warmth again. Like she'd been expecting me all along. I hovered by the mystery section, fingers trailing over worn covers. Buying time. Couldn't stay away from the crime scene, she teased, sliding off the stool to round the counter, her jeans whispering against the hardwood floor. I shrugged. Heat creeping up my neck. Guilt. Mostly. Figured I owed you a coffee. Or a book. Whatever fixes parking felonies. She laughed then. A sound like wind chimes in a storm. And it pulled me closer. Past the impulse buy table of local authors. We ended up in the back. A nook with mismatched armchairs and a kettle steaming on a hot plate. She poured chamomile. Strong and herbal. And we sat knee to knee. The space between us charged with the unsaid. She talked about the store first. How she'd sunk her savings into it 5 years back after a bad breakup in Chicago. Chasing the Pacific's promise of reinvention. Books don't judge, she said. Stirring her mug. Steam curling like questions. They just hold you. I nodded. Sipping too hot. Wincing at the burn that mirrored the one in my chest. My turn came reluctant. Words spilling about the firm. The endless mergers that left me hollow. Nights blurring into mornings with only case law for company. You ever wonder if you're fighting the wrong battles? She asked. Eyes on the window where rain traced silver paths. I paused. The question landing like a stone in still water. Every day, I admitted. Voice barely above the patter outside. Our gazes met. Held. And in that suspended breath, something shifted. Her hand brushed mine on the armrest. Accidental yet electric. And neither of us moved away. The afternoon bled into evening. Customers drifting in like ghosts. And I helped her shelve returns. Our fingers tangling over a volume of poetry that neither could place. Whitman. It turned out. His words on comradeship making my throat tight. When the clock struck 6. She locked the door behind the last patron. Flipping the sign to closed. Stay, she said. Simple as that. And pulled 2 wine glasses from a shelf. A bottle of Pinot from under the counter. We uncorked it on the worn rug in the reading corner. Backs against the shelves. Knees touching now without pretense. The wine warmed me from the inside. Loosening the knots I'd carried since the garage. She leaned in as the stories flowed. Her shoulder pressing mine. And I caught the faint scent of lavender and paper dust. Tell me something true, she murmured. Glass halfway to her lips. I hesitated. The vulnerability a foreign tongue. I'm scared, I whispered finally. Of the quiet. Of what it says when the work stops. She set her glass down. Turned to face me fully. Her hand finding my cheek. Thumb tracing the line of my jaw. The touch was tentative. Then sure. And I leaned into it. Eyes closing against the ache. Her lips met mine soft. Questioning. And I answered with a hunger that surprised us both. Pulling her closer until the world narrowed to the taste of wine and want. We broke apart gasping. Foreheads pressed. Breaths mingling in the lamplight. Dangerous, she breathed. A smile ghosting her mouth. But her eyes held mine. Deep and unafraid. I nodded. Heart thundering. Knowing she'd already claimed more than a spot. That night, I walked home through the mist-shrouded streets. Her kiss a brand on my skin. Wondering how one stolen space could unlock a door I'd bolted shut years ago. The week blurred into a rhythm of stolen moments. Her store becoming my sanctuary amid the firm's fluorescent grind. Mornings. I'd slip in before opening. Bringing pastries from the French spot on First. Flaky and buttery. Sharing them over the counter while she tallied receipts. Her laugh would bubble up at my stories of courtroom blunders. The way a witness once called me that shark in heels, and I'd watch her mouth curve. Mesmerized by the way her lips parted on a sigh. But doubts crept in like fog off the sound. Thick and unrelenting. Late nights in my office. City lights sprawling below like a glittering trap. I'd stare at depositions until the words swam. Her face superimposing over clauses and affidavits. What was this? A fling to fill the void. Or something that could shatter the careful life I'd built. May deserved more than my fragments. And I, God help me, deserved to feel again. Friday brought the storm. Literal and not. Rain lashed the windows of pages unbound as thunder grumbled over the Olympics. Customers scarce. She pulled me into the storage room. A cramped space of boxes and backstock. The air heavy with dust motes dancing in the single bulb's glow. Missed you, she said. Hands framing my face. Pulling me into a kiss that tasted of urgency and salt. We tumbled against the shelves. Books cascading like an avalanche. her body arching into mine with a knee that mirrored my own. Clothes shed in hurried pulls. Skin meeting skin in the dim light. Her gasps echoing mine as we explored the maps of each other. Fingers tracing ribs. Lips on collarbones. The world outside forgotten in the heat of discovery. She whispered my name like a prayer. April, and I shattered under her touch. Waves crashing through me until I was boneless. Spent. Her arms the only anchor. After. We lay tangled on a nest of drop cloths. Rain drumming a lullaby on the roof. Her head on my chest. Fingers idly circling my navel. She murmured. This feels like home. I held her tighter. Throat tight with words I couldn't voice. Home. The concept terrified me. A place I'd raised in pursuit of partnership tracks and corner offices. Yet here, in the chaos of her world, it beckoned. The firm dinner loomed that weekend. A black tie affair at the Four Seasons with partners circling like vultures. Toasting mergers over foie gras. I invited her on impulse. The words tumbling out over brunch at a Capitol Hill cafe. Mimosas fizzing in the sunlight slanting through ferns. Her eyes widened. Then crinkled with mischief. Fancy. I'll need something that doesn't scream book nerd. We shopped that afternoon. Pike Place alive with tourists and the cry of gulls. Her hand in mine as we ducked into boutiques. Laughter bubbling over ill-fitting gowns. She emerged from the dressing room in emerald silk. The color echoing her eyes. Hugging her curves like a secret shared. Perfect, I breathed. Stepping close to adjust the strap. My knuckles grazing her shoulder. The saleswoman cleared her throat discreetly. But we lingered. The mirror reflecting two women on the cusp. Flushed and alive. Saturday night. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and power plays. Air thick with perfume and ambition. May clung to my arm. Her gown whispering against my tuxedo pants. Drawing glances from colleagues who whispered behind champagne flutes. Who's the arm candy? One junior associate muttered. And I shot him a look that could curdle milk. She's not candy. I wanted to snap. She's the breath I didn't know I was holding. We navigated small talk. Her charm disarming the old guard. Quoting Austen to a tax attorney who blushed like a schoolboy. But as the night wore on, the wine loosened tongues. And doubts surfaced. A senior partner cornered me by the bar. Bourbon breath hot on my ear. Hayes. You're on the fast track. Don't let distractions derail you. His eyes flicked to May. Laughing with interns across the room. And ice settled in my veins. She caught my expression later. Pulling me onto the balcony overlooking Elliott Bay. Fairies cutting silver wakes in the dark. What's eating you? She asked. Hands on my lapels. Voice soft against the wind. I hesitated. The cities hum a distant roar. They see you as a detour. And I'm scared they're right. Her face fell. Shadows playing across her features. And she stepped back. Arms wrapping around herself. A detour, she echoed. Voice cracking like thin ice. Is that what this is to you? The rain started then. Fine and insistent. Blurring the lights. I reached for her. But she shook her head. Eyes glistening. I thought we were building something. Not circling a parking lot forever. She turned. Heels clicking away. Leaving me soaked and hollow under the awning. I chased her through the lobby. Tux sodden. Apologies spilling like the downpour outside. The valet fetched her Civic. And she slid in without a word. Engine humming to life. May? Wait, I pleaded. Hand on the door. She met my gaze. Raw and resolute. Figure out what you want. April. Before you steal more than a spot. The door clicked shut. Taillights fading into the storm. And I stood there. Rain mixing with tears I hadn't shed in years. The days that followed were a gray slog. Seattle's November chill seeping into my bones. Work piled up. Briefs blurring into nightmares where I circled endless garages. Her Civic always one turn ahead. I texted apologies into the void. Flowers delivered to the store with notes that begged for forgiveness. Radio silence. Broken only by a single reply, need space. Please respect it. I respected it. Or tried. Burying myself in motions and memos until my assistant staged an intervention over takeout pho in the conference room. Boss. You're a ghost. Go fix it. Her words echoed May's. And that night? Alone in my apartment with the sound's relentless lap. I cracked. Pacing the hardwood. Phone in hand. I dialed before doubt could intervene. She answered on the third ring. Voice wary. April. Just my name? But it undid me. I'm coming over, I said. Grabbing keys. Coat billowing like a flag of surrender. Her place was in Fremont. A converted warehouse loft with troll statues guarding the bridge outside. The door opened to her in sweats and socks. Hair tousled. Eyes shadowed with the same ache gnawing me. We stood there. Threshold between us. Until she stepped aside. Come in. The space was her, bookshelves groaning under volumes. Canvases half-painted leaning against walls. A cat weaving figure eights around my ankles. We settled on the couch. Chamomile steaming again. The silence thick with what-ifs. I'm sorry, I started. Words tumbling. For letting fear win. For seeing you as a risk instead of a revelation. She listened. Knees drawn up. Fingers tracing the mug's rim. I get it, she said finally. Voice steady. The world's wired to make us choose safety over soul. But I can't be your secret parking spot. April. I need all of you. Or nothing. Her honesty sliced clean. And I nodded. Reaching for her hand. You have it. All of it. The kiss that followed was slow. Deliberate. A promise sealed in the quiet hours. We talked till dawn. Unraveling fears like tangled yarn. Her head on my shoulder as the sky lightened over the canal. Weeks woven to months. Our lives threading together tentative. Then sure. Winter yielded to spring. Cherry blossoms dusting Capitol Hill like confetti. And we walked the markets hand in hand. No longer hiding. The firm noticed. Whispers turning to nods of acceptance. A junior partner even asking for book recs over coffee. May's store thrived. Readings drawing crowds. My name on the flyers beside hers as guest speaker on legal thrillers. One evening in May. As tulips bowed in the Volunteer Park Conservatory. Glass walls steaming with equatorial heat. She led me to the orchid alcove. Blooms unfurling in riotous color. Close your eyes, she whispered. And when I did. Felt the cool metal slip onto my finger. A ring simple as her touch. Not a proposal, she said. Voice trembling with joy. A promise. To build. Not steal. I opened my eyes. Tears blurring the petals. And pulled her close. Our laughter mingling with the humid air. Yes, I breathed. The word a vow. In that greenhouse haven. Amid strangers and strangers' dreams. We chose each other. Flaws and all. Years later. Looking back from our cabin on Whidbey Island. Ferry rides home a ritual of shared silences and stolen kisses. I marvel at that garage moment. One spot. One sigh. And she'd claimed my guarded heart. Teaching me that the most dangerous thefts are the ones that free us. In the end. Love isn't a heist. It's the quiet return. Whole and human. To the spaces we once thought lost. The ferry horn blasted low and mournful across the slate-gray waters. Pulling me from the fog of half-remembered dreams. I stirred on the lumpy couch in May's loft. Her cat missed her. Whiskers kneading my thigh with insistent paws. As if demanding tribute for the night's uneasy truce. Sunlight slanted through the high windows. Gilding the dust motes in lazy spirals. And I sat up slow. Head throbbing from wine and worry. May's bedroom door stood ajar. The quilt rumpled like an abandoned invitation. But she was already up. The clatter of mugs in the kitchen a tentative bridge. I padded in barefoot. The cool concrete floor grounding me. And found her at the counter. Pouring coffee from a French press. Steam rising like unspoken apologies. She looked smaller in the morning light. Blonde waves tied back loose. Wearing an oversized tee that skimmed her thighs. The fabric soft from countless washes. Her eyes met mine over the rim of her mug. Guarded yet gentle. And she slid a cup my way without a word. Black. 2 sugars. Just how I liked it. A small mercy that twisted something deep in my gut. Thanks, I murmured. Wrapping my hands around the warmth. The ceramic burning just enough to feel alive. We stood there. The hum of the fridge the only sound. Until she leaned against the sink. Crossing her arms like armor. Slept okay, she asked. Voice careful. As if testing the ice beneath us. I nodded. Though the couch had left knots in my neck. Echoes of the balcony chill. Better than I deserved. She sighed then. A soft exhale that carried the weight of the night. And pushed off the counter to face me fully. April. Last night. It hurt. Hearing you echo them. Like I'm some phase you'll outgrow. Her words landed precise, each one a pinprick to the bruise I'd inflicted. I set the mug down, closing the distance in 2 steps, my hands hovering before settling on her arms, thumbs stroking the gooseflesh there. You're not. God. May. You're the first real thing in years. My voice cracked on the edge, vulnerability spilling unbidden, and she searched my face, green eyes piercing the defenses I'd worn like a second skin. Slowly, her hands covered mine, squeezing once, and the tension uncoiled a fraction, air lightning between us. We migrated to the balcony then, coffees in hand, the Fremont Troll looming below like a benevolent giant, graffiti-tagged and mossy. The canal bustled with joggers and kayaks, the city waking in fits and starts, and we leaned on the railing, shoulders brushing. Tell me about her, she said after a while. Gaze on a barge chugging east. The one who made you build the walls. I hesitated. The story a scar I'd picked at in solitude but never shared. Elena. Law school flame. All fire and ambition. Who'd promised forever until a clerkship in D.C. pulled her away, leaving me with a sublet and a heart mapped in fractures. She said distance wouldn't change us, I started, voice low against the traffic hum. But it did. Letters turned to emails, calls to silences, until I was just chasing echoes. May listened without interrupting, her presence a steady anchor, and when I trailed off, she turned, cupping my cheek. I'm not her, she said simply. And you're not that girl anymore. The kiss she initiated was featherlight, a question answered in the tilt of my head, deepening until the coffees cooled forgotten on the ledge. That afternoon, we wandered Fremont's streets, her hand slipping into mine as naturally as breath. The contact a quiet rebellion against the doubts still lurking. We ducked into a record shop, vinyl crackling under the needle with Springsteen's gravel voice crooning about highways and heartbreak. And she spun me slow in the aisle, laughing when I stepped on her toes. You're terrible, she teased. But her eyes sparkled, pulling me under like tide pools at low tide. Lunch was at a hole-in-the-wall taqueria. Al pastor tacos dripping with pineapple and heat, shared from a single plate, our forks clinking like toasts. She talked about her store's upcoming reading series, inviting local poets and activists, her passion lighting her from within, hands gesturing vivid. You should read something, she said, sauce on her lip that I wiped away with my thumb, lingering to taste the spice. Me? In front of strangers? I scoffed. But the idea lodged, a spark in the dry tinder of my routine. Why not? Shake up the suits. She grinned, leaning across the table to steal a bite. And in that moment, the world felt expansive, possibilities blooming like the magnolias lining the avenue. Back at the loft, we napped tangled on her bed, the cat a warm lump at our feet, afternoon sun filtering through sheer curtains. Waking to her fingers tracing lazy patterns on my back. I rolled to face her, noses brushing. Stay tonight, she whispered. And I did. Dinner scavenged from her fridge. Pasta tossed with whatever wilted greens and garlic we could muster. Eaten cross-legged on the floor amid scattered manuscripts. Conversation flowed easy then, barriers crumbling with each shared anecdote. She confessed her own ghosts. A conservative family back in Ohio who'd cut ties when she came out. The ache of holidays spent solo until the store became her family. Books don't leave, she said. Fork midway to her mouth. Voice thick. I pulled her into my lap, arms wrapping tight, murmuring nonsense about futures filled with ferry rides and joint readings. Night fell soft. City lights twinkling like conspirators. And we made love deliberate, bodies mapping forgiveness in slow arcs. Her sighs were music, breaths hitching on my name. And I worshipped her with lips and hands, erasing the night's fracture with every tender press. Afterward, spooned in the dark, her heartbeat a steady drum against my palm, I whispered, I choose you. Every time. Monday dawned crisp, the sound a mirror of blue, and I arrived at the firm with a lightness I'd forgotten. Briefs flying from my fingers like birds. Colleagues noticed, ribbing me over coffee runs. Hayes, you look human. I laughed it off. But inside, gratitude swelled for the woman who'd cracked my armor without a gavel. That evening, I surprised her at the store, closing time rush fading as I flipped the sign, locking the door with a click that echoed promise. My turn to steal you, I said, pulling a blanket from my bag. spreading it on the reading rug. Cheese and crackers pilfered from the office kitchen. A bottle of that Pinot chilled in my cooler. And we picnicked under the skylight. Stars pricking the velvet sky. She fed me a grape. Juice bursting sweet. And we talked dreams deferred. Hers of a writer's retreat in the San Juans. Mine of pro bono work for queer youth. Passions reignited in the glow of her belief. We could do it together, she mused. Head on my knee. Fingers toying with my cuff. The idea took root. Vines of possibility twining through my skepticism. As winter's grip loosened, we ventured beyond the city. Weekend drives to the Olympics. Hiking trails where ferns unfurled like secrets. Waterfalls misting our faces. One trail. Near Hurricane Ridge. Snow lingering in patches. We paused at a viewpoint. Evergreens marching to the horizon. She packed a thermos of cocoa. Spiked with whiskey. And we sat on a log. Backs to the wind. Her gloved hand in mine. Remember the garage? She asked. Steam from the cup fogging her glasses. I chuckled. Pulling her closer. How could I forget? You looked ready to cite me for Grand Theft Auto. She nudged me. Playful. Then grew serious. Gaze on the distant peaks. It was fate. Disguised as fury. I kissed her temple. Inhaling the cold crispness of her skin. Or me being an ass. But she shook her head. Turning to capture my lips. The kiss warming deeper than the liquor. On the drive back. Radio humming folk tunes. Her hand on my thigh. I felt the shift. From stolen moments to shared path. Spring brought changes subtle. Then bold. I cleared space in my closet for her tease. Her toothbrush claiming the bathroom counter beside mine. Joint grocery runs to the co-op. Arguing over organic kale versus conventional. Laughter echoing aisles. And the readings? Oh. The readings. My first. Nerves jangling like loose change. Voice steadying on her encouraging nod from the front row. Stories of lost cases and found grace. Applause thundering soft. Her pride a bomb. One night. Post-event. Wine flowing among patrons. A woman approached. Eyes lingering on May too long. Compliments laced with intent. Jealousy flared hot. Irrational. But May's hand on my back. Firm and sure. Doused it. Yours, she mouthed later. In the alley behind the store. Pressing me against brick for a kiss that claimed and calmed. Yet shadows lingered. The firm's merger talks heating. Hours stretching into oblivion. One midnight. I stumbled into the loft. Ty askew. To find her asleep on the couch. Manuscript forgotten. Worry etched even in repose. Guilt gnawed. And I carried her to bed. Whispering sorries into her hair. Vowing balance. Summer arrived in a blaze. Ferries packed with tourists. And we escaped to the San Juans. A rented cabin on Orcas. Waves lapping cedar shores. Days blurred in kayaks and cliffside trails. Nights in hammocks swaying. Her stories read aloud under lantern light. This is us, she said one evening. Fireflies winking in the dusk. And I believed it. Heart full. But autumn whispered returns. The city calling with deadlines and displays. Back in Seattle. The balance tipped. My caseload a beast. Dinners reduced to texts and takeout. May's patience frayed. Notes left on the fridge, miss your laugh. Come home soon. I tried. Carving evenings for walks in Discovery Park. Sand between toes. Her head on my shoulder as seals barked offshore. The breaking point came mid-October. A storm raging. Power flickering in the loft. I arrived late. Soaked. Case won but soul spent. To find her packing a box of my things. Space, she said. Voice steady but eyes red-rimmed. You promised all? But I'm getting echoes again. The words echoed Elena's silence. And panic surged. Raw and real. I dropped my bag. Pulling her into the foyer. Rain dripping from my coat. Don't. Please. I'm here. Fighting for us. Tears mingled with droplets on her cheek as I kissed her. Desperate. Pouring pleas into the press of lips. She softened. Then. Arms wrapping fierce. And we sank to the floor. Storm raging outside as we reaffirmed in whispers and touches. From there. Resolve hardened. I negotiated reduced hours. Pro bono carved into my slate. Evenings reclaimed for her world. Readings became ours. Her hand in mine at signings. Our story woven into dedications. Holidays dawned shared. A tree in the loft strung with lights and ornaments from thrift hunts. Her family's absence filled with chosen kin. Friends gathering for eggnog and carols. New Year's. On the waterfront. Fireworks blooming over the Needle. We toasted with cider. Her ring finger brushing mine in promise. To thefts that heal, she said. And I laughed. Pulling her close. The city's pulse our heartbeat. The cabin on Whidbey felt like a dream woven from salt air and cedar smoke. But reality nipped at its edges as the ferry docked back in Seattle. Horns blaring like reveille. I gripped the wheel tighter than necessary. The Deception Pass bridge looming ahead. Its arches a gateway to the mainland's demands. May sat shotgun. Sketchpad balanced on her knee. Charcoal smudging her fingers as she captured the water's churn below. "Penny for your thoughts," she said. Not looking up. But her voice carried that knowing lilt. The one that peeled back my layers without effort. I glanced over. Her profile soft against the autumn blaze of madronas. Leaves like fire on the roadside. Just. The firm's breathing down my neck again. That pro bono expansion they want. It's gold. But the hours. The words hung heavy. A confession I'd skirted during our island idyll. Where time stretched lazy and unclaimed. She closed the pad. Setting it aside. Her hand finding my thigh. A steady pressure that anchored the drift. "We'll figure it," she said simply. Thumb circling denim. Like always. But her eyes held a flicker. The shadow of past fractures. And I nodded. Swallowing the guilt that rose bitter as tide pool brine. The drive home wound through farms and forests. Radio murmuring indie folk. Lyrics about roads not taken twisting the knife. Back in the loft. Boxes from the cabin unpacked in a scatter of shells and sea glass. We fell into routine with a gentleness born of near losses. Mornings. Her brewing pour over while I scrolled emails. Feet tangled under the table. Evenings. Her closing the store early for dinners at Alki. Beach walks where waves lapped cold. Her arm looped through mine against the wind. "Tell me about the case," she'd prompt. Listening as I vented about indigent clients and bureaucratic snarls. Her questions sharpening my resolve like whetstone. The pro bono clinic launched in November. A pop-up in Pioneer Square's underbelly. Folding tables and volunteer lawyers huddled against the damp. May showed up unannounced. Thermos of soup in hand. Ladling it out to the line snaking down the alley. "Fuel for the fighters," she called. Winking at me over a steaming bowl. And something in my chest expanded. Pride mingling with the love that had rooted deep. One client stuck. A young trans woman named Riley. Early 20s with tattoos like armor and eyes haunted by eviction notices. Her story poured out in fits. Voice trembling over discrimination suits. And I took her case. May sitting in on intakes. Her quiet empathy drawing out details I'd missed. "You're a team," Riley said one gray afternoon. Hugging us both outside the community center. Her grin fierce. "Makes me believe in wins." That belief fueled late nights. Me poring over precedents in the loft's corner desk. May curling beside with a novel. Foot nudging mine in solidarity. But strain showed in small ways. Her yawns at readings. My snapped replies over forgotten dry cleaning. "We're fraying," she said one night. Rain lashing windows. Her head in my lap on the couch. I stroked her hair. Inhaling lavender shampoo. And admitted. "Yeah. But we're mending too." Winter solstice brought a party at the store. Twinkle lights strung among shelves. Mulled wine simmering. Locals crowding for carols and cookies. I manned the door. Collecting coats. Watching May weave through the throng. Her laugh a beacon. An old friend from Chicago appeared. Uninvited. A woman named Lena with sharp bob and sharper wit. Enveloping May in a hug that lingered. Jealousy flickered. Unbidden. As they chatted animated. Heads close over shared memories. Later. By the cider bowl. Lena cornered me. "You two look good. But May. She gives everything. Don't take without giving back." Her words landed like hail. And I nodded. Throat tight. Vowing vigilance. That night. Driving home through slushy streets. I broached it. "Old flame?" May glanced over. Streetlights gilding her cheek. "Once. College. But water under bridges." Her hand squeezed mine. Dispelling shadows. The new year dawned with resolutions whispered over breakfast. Mine to delegate more. Hers to expand the store's online presence. We celebrated with a hike in Rattlesnake Ledge. boots crunching frost-laced trails. Summit views of the Cascades blanketed white. At the top, wind whipping. She pulled sandwiches from her pack. Turkey and brie on sourdough. Feeding me bites between gusts. To us, she toasted with water bottle raised. And I kissed her, tasting salt and promise. Spring thawed the city. Tulip festivals bursting color in the arboretum. And we volunteered at a pride booth. Rainbow flags snapping. May painting faces while I handed flyers. A kid, maybe 10, approached shy. Asking about girls like you, and May knelt. Explaining love's shapes with patience that humbled me. It's okay to be you, she said. Dotting a star on his cheek. And his mother's grateful nod sealed it. This was impact. Real and rippling. But the firm's merger closed in April. Celebrations laced with pink slips. Colleagues drifting like leaves. My mentor, grizzled Tom with his endless anecdotes, pulled me aside in the emptying boardroom. Hayes, you're the heart now. Lead with it. His retirement loomed. A void. And I stepped up. Restructuring the pro bono arm. May's input shaping outreach to queer nonprofits. One evening, post-meeting, we escaped to Gasworks Park. Kites dotting the sky like errant thoughts. The lake a mirror of fading sun. She spread a blanket. Unpacking cheeses and figs. Her fingers deft as she sliced. Proud of you, she said. Popping a berry in my mouth. Juice-staining lips. Conversation turned to futures. Her dream of a cabin expansion. My musings on adjunct teaching at the law school. Family, she ventured. Voice soft against the lapping water. Someday? The word hung. Vast as the Olympics across the bay. And I paused. Heart swelling. With you? Absolutely. We lay back. Hands linked. Clouds scudding overhead. The idea taking shape like kites climbing thermals. Summer hummed in. Ferries to Bainbridge for berry picking. Vines heavy with reds and blacks. Stains on our shirts like war paint. Jams canned in the loft's tiny kitchen. Steam fogging windows. Her laughter at my botched seals. Practice makes perfect, she teased. Licking spoon clean. Pulling me in for a taste that led to counters cleared and bodies pressed. A weekend in the Cascades. Rented yurt under stars. We hiked to alpine lakes. Water so clear it drank the sky. Skinny dipping on impulse. Cold shocking gasps from us. Her body gleaming wet. I pulled her close. Floating weightless. Kisses bubbling to the surface. Forever feels possible here, she murmured. And I agreed. The mountains eternal witnesses. Fall brought harvest fairs. Pumpkins carved on the balcony. Seeds roasted spicy. But a call from Ohio shattered the idyll. Her mother's voice frail over the line. Illness creeping uninvited. May's face drained. Phone slipping from fingers. And I held her as sobs racked. The loft echoing loss. Go, I urged. Booking flights. Packing with quiet efficiency. She returned changed. Eyes shadowed. Stories of bedside vigils and half-forgiven words. They saw us, she whispered one night. Curled small. In photos. Didn't flinch. Healing came slow. Therapy sessions I attended when invited. Her hand in mine as words unpicked knots. The store hosted a grief reading. Her curation raw. And I spoke. Voice steady on borrowed courage. Winter circled again. Holidays hybrid. Video calls to a thawing family. Our table set for strays from the clinic. Riley, now housed and suing her old landlord, joined us, toasting with sparkling juice. To Chosen, she said. And tears pricked. May's foot nudging mine under cloth. One snowy eve. Post-dinner. We shoveled the square's walks. Flakes catching in her lashes. My breath fogging her scarf. Marry me, I blurted. Shovel pausing. Heart bare. She stilled. Then grinned. Snow-dusted. Thought you'd never ask. The ring. Simple gold with an opal glint. Waited in my pocket. Slipped on later by firelight. Fitting perfect. Spring wedding planning bloomed. Small affair in the arboretum. Vows under dogwoods. Friends witnessing. Riley is best woman. Toasting us with wit sharp. From parking lots to forever, she quipped. Glasses clinking. Years layered like patina. The cabin bought outright. Weekends ferried with crates of books and blueprints. May's retreat launched. Writers flocking. Me guest lecturing on narrative and law. Kids came later. Fostered then adopted. Two girls with curls and questions. Filling rooms with chaos and joy. Looking back. That stolen spot was Genesis. A theft birthing abundance. May didn't just take my heart, she returned it fuller. Teaching grace in the giving. In our life. Woven tight. We stand whole. Human in the mess and miracle. The gavel fell with a finality that echoed through the courthouse halls. The judges ruling a victory hard won. Papers shuffling as the plaintiffs rose. Tears streaking faces weathered by fights long overdue. I gathered my files. The weight lifting not just from shoulders but soul. Glancing at May in the back row. Her nod subtle. Pride radiating quiet. Outside. Portland's rose gardens bloomed riotous under June sun. A conference detour turned celebration. Her hand slipping into mine as we wandered paths. Petals brushing ankles. Speechless, she teased. Bumping my hip. The air sweet with earth and bloom. I pulled her behind a trellis. Kissing her deep. Tasting victory and vanilla from her latte. Grateful, I murmured against her neck. For you? Always pushing me to this. The case? A class action for LGBTQ housing rights. Spanned states. Her bookstore network funneling stories that fueled the fire. We'd driven down from Seattle. Top down on the Volvo. Wind whipping hair. Stops at roadside stands for huckleberry pies. Back north. The cabin awaited. Ferry slicing silver wakes. Our girls chattering in the cabin below decks. Lila with her sketches. Sophia braiding May's hair. Mama April won again, Lila crowed. Hugging my legs. And I scooped her up. Spinning till giggles peeled. Home was this. Layered lives in wood-beamed rooms. Shelves groaning with their chapter books beside our dog-eared loves. Evenings. After bedtime stories and tucked-in kisses. We'd collapse on the porch swing. Her head on my shoulder. The sound a lullaby. Remember when you thought love was a liability, she'd whisper. Fingers laced. I'd chuckle. Kissing knuckles. Foolish me. It's the asset that compounds. The retreat expanded that summer. Cabins dotted like mushrooms in the meadow. Writers' voices carrying on breeze. I taught a seminar. Story is strategy, May guesting on emotional arcs. Our synergy sparking questions that lingered into bonfires. One attendee. A poet from New Mexico with ink-stained sleeves like May's early days. Pulled us aside. You too. You're the plot twist we all chase. Fall painted the islands gold. Apple harvests filling crates. Pies baked in the wood stove. Cinnamon scent mingling with salt. The girls' school play. Lila as a fierce pirate queen. Sophia the clever parrot. Had us in front row. May's camera clicking. My cheers loudest. Post-show ice cream run to the village. Cones dripping. Her wiping chins with napkins. Our laughter a chorus. Challenges came. As they do. A storm felling the cabin's oak. Branches like broken promises. Insurance tangles. Repairs dragging. But we hammered side by side. Girls helping with toy tools. May's playlist of old soul keeping rhythm. Resilient, she said. Sweat-streaked. Handing me a nail. Like us. Winter brought her mother's visit. Tentative steps across the threshold. Grandkids bridging gaps with hugs and drawings. Awkward dinners thawed to story swapped. Her hand under the table steadying mine. Healing, she breathed later. Tears salt on pillows. Because of you. Spring renewal. The clinic's annual gala in Seattle. Me in tux. Her in sapphire silk. Dancing under chandeliers to jazz swells. Riley. Now advocate herself. Toasted us. Words weaving our journey into inspiration. From a stolen spot to stolen hearts. Worldwide. Years stacked like driftwood. Silvered smooth. The girls grew. Teens now with crushes and causes. Lila's art shows echoing May's passion. Sophia's debates mine. College loomed. Empty nests whispered. But we planned travels. Iceland's geysers. Tuscany's vines. Hands linked across maps. One anniversary. Back to that garage. Now a ritual. Parking side by side. Her Civic still blue. My Prius dented from kid hauling. We leaned on hoods. Coffee steaming. Reminiscing. Best theft ever, she said. Pulling me close. I kissed her slow. World fading to us. And the return? Priceless. In quiet moments. Penning memoirs for the store's legacy edition. I trace our arc, from confrontation to communion. The danger not in loss but liberation. May stole my guarded self. Gifting back a woman unafraid. Loves humanism in every shared breath. We age graceful. Lines etching stories. Hearts full. The most dangerous gift enduring.